You know, I was a marcher on the pro-democracy, anti-China marches myself, with my family and my friends. We marched for 30 years, every year for 30 years, believing what we'd been told about mainland China, believing, you know, the West was all good and China was all bad. And then slowly, we just woke up. And by 2019, everybody, I think, in Hong Kong woke up and realized something really bad is happening here. What we're being told about China is not true, and what we're being told about the West is not true. In fact, both the West and China, there are good things, there are bad things. They're not very different. And then we start to open our eyes. In Hong Kong in particular, we realize we're being used as a political football. We're being used as a weapon to demonize China. And that's, I think, when a lot of things changed in Hong Kong. For me, I said, you know, I've got to stop trusting these sources who are telling me lies. I've got to do research by myself. And I think a lot of Hong Kong people, a lot of Hong Kong reporters started to really dig and found the truth. The trial was really remarkable. I mean, so many amazing stories came out of that trial. And for me, the real star of the trial was Jimmy Lai's phone, because he would have one point of view, the prosecutor would have a different point of view, and then out would come his phone and the messages on his phone. And that revealed so much about what was really going on between that publisher and people overseas. So the evidence was amazing, and the evidence was overwhelming against him. So it was inevitable that he would be found guilty. So many foreign media have said that the trial was politically motivated, but that's clearly rubbish. You know, court reporters, I've been a court reporter for many years, court reporters measure the independence of a country's judiciary by seeing if the courts sometimes disagree with the government or whether it always agrees with the government. In Hong Kong, the court and the government often disagree, very often. So it's definitely in that category of a free judiciary. And the other point is that there are global measures of legal independence. And Hong Kong scores very high, higher than many European countries, higher than countries in Asia, in Africa, and higher than the United States. So Hong Kong does have true independent judiciary and the rule of law, no doubt about that. The most shocking thing about the trial was how Jimmy Lai hurt the Hong Kong people. When the US had policies against Hong Kong, when the US had sanctions against Hong Kong, when the US removed the trade privileges from Hong Kong and hurt Hong Kong businesses, when the US did that, Jimmy Lai said, go ahead, do it. Jimmy Lai hurt the people of Hong Kong. And that's the story that's not being told. It's not going out in the international media. You know, people in the international media, they show sympathy for Jimmy Lai. You know, he's an old man. But what about the old women in Hong Kong? They've been hurt by Jimmy Lai. Their economy, their businesses were damaged by Jimmy Lai. Some of them went out of business after these trade sanctions, after these trade privileges were removed. They lost their business, they lost their jobs. Where's the sympathy for the Hong Kong people that Jimmy Lai hurt? Jimmy Lai worked for the United States. I mean, he said so publicly. We are working for you, he said in the White House at a White House meeting. And then he repeated that same phrase later on TV in America. We are working for you in your enemy camp. So he saw himself as working for the Americans in the enemy camp, as if Hong Kong was the enemy camp, right? So he's not serving Hong Kong people, he's serving the US people. The other point is that I see in almost every article in the Western press that he was a fighter for democracy in Hong Kong. No, he opposed democracy in Hong Kong. Hong Kong government tried to introduce universal suffrage. They had a policy that would start in 2017 where every Hong Kong citizen would have universal suffrage, a direct vote for his local candidate and a direct vote for the leader of Hong Kong. Jimmy Lai's Apple Daily campaigned against that. They didn't like the fact that there would be an electoral college involved in choosing the candidates. They campaigned against the introduction of democracy for Hong Kong. So it wasn't a pro-democracy paper, it was an anti-China paper, which is very different. It's very interesting that the CIA was formed in 1947, and by 1949 the CIA had set up its international bases. One of them was Hong Kong, one of the first international CIA bases. So Hong Kong has always been spook city. It's always been the headquarters of the CIA for the East Asia region. And for that reason, the US and UK, they were in it as well. US and UK decided that Hong Kong must never have a security law. I mean, I was born in Sri Lanka, but I'm actually a British citizen. I went to school in the UK, and almost all urban developed countries have national security laws. The UK has some of the toughest security laws in the world, much, much tougher than the national security law of Hong Kong. So if you have an objective comparison between the UK security law and Hong Kong one, you can see the Hong Kong one is very mild, very thoughtful. For example, it does not ban dissent, it does not ban protest, even though the Western media says it does. You can literally look it up online and read it for yourself. It doesn't ban those things. I mean, one of the funniest elements in this trial we're discussing was Jimmy Lai's write-up about the national security law. He wrote that the national security law would lead to execution by firing squad for people like him. Now, that clearly is not included in the national security law. There's no death penalty. There's no mention of firing squad. During the trial, at one point, the judges asked him, "Why do you say this? Where did you get this information from? It's not in the national security law." And you know what he replied? He replied he saw it on YouTube. He saw it on YouTube. I mean, he's supposed to be a journalist, right, running a newspaper. If he's going to take stuff from YouTube and pretend that's a legitimate source of news, you know, that's not journalism. I don't know what that is, but it's not journalism. I mean, there's a very interesting change happening in the world. I mean, just as recently as 2 or 3 years ago, you know, everything in the news was seen through the Western lens. You know, China was different, different is bad. Anything that was not Western was bad. Now things have changed. Now people are starting to realize, wait a minute, because something is different doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. So China is becoming kind of cool recently. So the new generation of young people are quite open-minded. They're quite ready to see things in a fresh way. So I think there is a really important change happening. And the Jimmy Lai trial is an interesting example of two different stories. There's one fake story that he is a fighter for democracy who is being persecuted for freedom of speech. And then there's the real story. He was charged with collusion with foreign forces, and there was plenty of evidence showing that that was absolutely undeniably true. So it's two completely different stories. And in the old days, one story would have dominated and the fake story, and the real story would have struggled to be told. Now we have a chance of getting the truth out there to the world about Hong Kong, about mainland China.